and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, aka The Guilty Environmentalist.
Yes.
My name is Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
And we're going to continue, this week we're going to continue our discussion of the upcoming UK general election, candidates, parties. We finished like a little bit of a way into talking about Labour. So you know every single thing ever about the Labour Party has to mention antisemitism now.
Yeah.
We're going to just try and see what's going on there a little bit. So yeah, with that... All right, how's it going, Ivanka?
It's going very well. The husband, today we are recording on the 29th of November, which is my friend Hazel's birthday. Happy birthday, okay. Hazel.
Pertinent podcast fact.
It is. It used to be a national holiday in the former Yugoslavia, which is why I always remember her birthday. But also, my husband and child are out in Brighton waving placards and joining in with the global climate strike. So I'm still being represented because there was no way we could risk it. I've hardly worked this week, so I've had no childcare. So needs must. So, but he sent me a lovely picture of her holding up a socialist worker placard that says "System change, not climate change." So
just scroll back a couple of weeks in your Instagram feed to see that picture.
I don't know. I have to decide whether I'll post a picture of the child. I try and minimise pictures, blur out her face. Maybe she'll want to grow up and join the Tories.
In rebellion.
I doubt it. Children are quite clear on what's fair and what's not fair. I think we sort of... I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting how much we have to teach them to, we have to teach them to share, I think, because they're like, me, I am, everything's about me. The world revolves around them, little narcissists, definitely. But in my experience of playing with little children is they've got quite a good sense of like, what is fair and it's not fair that they've got one of those and I haven't got one of those, and how come their mummy's got that and I haven't, and all that sort of thing. So they're quite nice little truth speakers. Yeah, narcissistic truth speakers. But
there is that.
So we haven't had childcare this week, so Nick's had to do Frozen 2.
Oh, right. Yeah, we saw a lot of stuff about that in Milan, actually. Like, they've
Lots
done a
of
whole
children
bridge
dressed.
and leaves and stuff. Like,
They've gone to Frozen. They went to see Frozen 2, and apparently then there was this whole explanation of why. Apparently, I got a text message. She's refusing to leave the cinema because she wants to bring the movie home to show you.
Okay, how does that work?
She was like, it's like, we can't. It's not out yet to buy, but can't we get it on the thing with the N? That's Netflix. Has the thing with the N got it? The N. No, it's not out yet on Netflix. It will never probably be on Netflix.
Well, not with Disney Plus.
What about CBeebies? What about the one with the apple? No,
you need Disney Plus.
Still no. Anyway, that's the insight into my home life.
Sounds good. How am I, you ask? I'm all right. I've been reading Darren Brown's book.
Wow.
Or listening to the audio. Do you know, because he was talking on... I was listening to him talking to Adam Buxton. And for the second time recently, I saw him talking about something else, about magicians. I think I might have even mentioned it. But about how it's not about you looking clever. It needs to be about a story for the other person. And then he said a couple more things. And he's interested in happiness. And I was like, do you know what?
All right,
I need this guy as my mentor or something somehow. I need to get him. If anyone knows Darren Brown, can you give me a hookup? Because I've got some stuff to talk to him about. But I checked his Twitter. He's got like 2 million followers. So that's proper famous, isn't it? That's proper.
That is proper famous.
I just think he's on the right. He's on that sort of Alain de Botton sort of wavelength, which is quite cool. And I just been listening to this book and listening, and it's nice to have a nice pithy way of talking about what my new app will be doing or has done. The happiness app, it's all about connecting your experiencing self to your remembering self. So you're experiencing hedonistic, give me something now, like I feel happy, I feel sad, like the moment, versus the, where's my life going? Draw that your story of your life. Like, this is what happened, this is how I joined these dots. And the point of my app that I'm working on is to help you connect the dots in different ways to tell a better story to yourself than like the one that you might kind of fall into if you don't really inspect it very well. So I'm enjoying the book. I'm hoping to somehow find some sort of connect. I managed to vaguely connect with Alain de Botton. I just need to. I think he probably. I need an app endorsement from Darren, and
then you can be our Patreon. Some interesting things with Restaurants Writing this week, just as a minor aside, ahead of our election special. Next time we record, we'll be discussing the results. Or we'll be ignoring them, going, la, 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 I don't want to think about it, I can't handle it. No, I've done an interesting...
Nigel Farage, Prime Minister.
I am doing this interesting thing with Restaurants Writing. It's like going through... Because it's a business that doesn't have an office, we all work very flexibly, we share profits, la la la. So it's actually, it ticks lots of boxes already. But then once you start breaking it down, so we're getting ready for the Bravo competition in the new year. So I've ordered all the flyers and things. It's all recycled. I pushed the printer to try and find the most sustainable option, because they go, oh yeah, we've got eco laminating now. What does that mean? Oh, it's biodegradable. Biodegradable just means that it goes into tiny little pieces. It's not the same as compostable, where it disappears and re-enters the food chain. And biodegradable just means teeny tiny bits of poison. So I was like, yeah, no thanks, I don't want that eco laminate. And then you do still need business cards. I don't, but the people that go and see people do. So we've got them on 100% recycled stock. Christmas cards, 100% recycled, and we've got the backs printed, but the fronts we're going to do ourselves. I'm so excited. So anyway, that's been my going through. And we've got an apprentice starting, an actual apprentice, digital marketing apprentice. Anyway, that was my Restaurants Brighton update.
Good to hear.co.uk update. I am really needing to finish something. Okay, back to the Labour Party.
Yes.
What the fuck is with this anti-Semitism stuff? Like, what? So we've talked about this off podcast a couple of times, and it seems like taking Israel Palestine out of the equation, it seems like the people that don't like Labour have kind of managed to make this thing stick, which I don't see how it's connected to the ideologies of the Labour Party to be racist against Jewish people. I don't see how that would intersect except by coincidence. Like how the values aren't values that are racist values. Like
I think. The values are not racist values. There are though. I feel a little bit like I don't want to believe that there is systemic anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. I don't want to believe that the Labour Party is any more anti-Semitic than it is racist in any other way, or because it stands for equality for starters. Yeah, that's one of its core values. We are together. We are like more than our parts. So it's not that's a terrible paraphrasing of what the Labour Party stands for. Anyway, so I don't want to believe it, but I know. But there's some people that I know who I respect who I will never vote Corbyn because he's anti-Semitic, and I can't help but wonder where that's come from. I think the Labour Party itself, this is why, Bruce, this is why the Labour Party annoys me, because they don't deal with problems properly as a party. because so things like that, of course, if you've got a membership of over 500,000 people, so the Labour Party of Great Britain is a powerful force of people who pay their subs every month, and there's a lot of us. And in that, of course, there is a percentage of every population that is anti-Semitic, and of course there's all sorts in the Labour Party, just like there are everywhere else. The problem boils down to not dealing with it properly, and the complaints procedures are not followed up properly, and if they are, then they are not seen to be followed up properly, and they are not treated with the urgency and respect that they deserve. Because otherwise these negative stories, I don't know if they're stories like, because in Brighton and Hove there've been some real tangible witnessed experiences by people who are Jewish, who have really experienced some nasty anti-Semitic behaviour. And so I look on my Facebook feed, I've got some people that have been in the British Labour Party for 60 years, old campaigners that are there. They just don't want to believe, they can't believe. They also, when somebody then brings up an example going, yes, but that guy, he is a member and he said this to me, and they go, but he doesn't represent Labour, he is a member. That's their then counter argument, which I understand, but isn't really good enough. Because if we saw out and out racism of any description, like anything, it should be dealt with immediately and strongly. You can't sort of go, oh, don't do that. That's, I don't even know how it's being dealt with. People aren't being suspended quickly enough, for example. We are up against a Dominic Cummings Machiavellian brain, and we the Labour Party, we are not doing as good a job.
Yeah. Well, do you think they're trying to do a don't feed the trolls thing? Do you think they're trying to do let's not let the opponents set the agenda? Or is it,
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But what I will say is that if that's true, that has not worked and it needs to change.
It's just like, it astounds me that it was just like the other day I was scrolling through a Guardian article about something completely unrelated to that, about just because it had the word Corbyn in it, just because it was talking about something Corbyn was talking about, it was just like completely out of place paragraph about this, and it's like, what is going on? Like,
I think the thing,
and the BBC just like, they're just serially kind of anti.
I think it's very hard then to not take it into misrepresentation, conspiracy theories, blah, 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 which kind of feeds it. So for two things. One, the feeding the trolls, not feeding the trolls approach, I think works very well, like online when you're dealing with anonymous people. But the Labour Party has a membership. If you are at a meeting, we know who you are, where you live, and what your phone number is, and what your date of birth. Like, it's not anonymous. You must be accountable for what you say, and therefore there must be a procedure that deals with that. That's one thing. The second thing that makes it very hard not to kind of go, is this a story? Is this something that's being blown out of proportion? Is it a thing or isn't it? When we've got a Prime Minister who has published an article likening Muslim women to letterboxes. Like, that isn't even
overt and unrepentant racism for which people throughout the Tory party. Like,
it's like it's very hard to take. And this is where it's difficult, because it's like, but they're Islamophobic and we're just anti-Semitic. The Labour Party should be dealing with the anti-Semitic behaviour hard, fast, strictly, no messing about, and it should be above that sort of behaviour. Well, they're Islamophobic. However, it's very hard. I can understand why people descend into that. But they're this and they're that. And I certainly wasn't condoning, and that's the reason I wouldn't, because I wouldn't condone that thing, because it's an absolute staple of the right. Like, and you saw it in the impeachment proceedings. It's like you've got the people kind of presenting the evidence, and then you've got these Republicans just going, "Whoa, we've heard that this other person is doing something bad." They kind of go straight
straight to the logical fallacies.
Yeah.
Like straight into the logical fallacies. And it's like, Jesus Christ, like, this couldn't be more transparent at this point.
No.
So,
I mean,
you don't want to just fall into that. And in a way, by doing that, you're kind of playing their game as well. And it's like, okay, well, we're all terrible and no one's going to vote for anyone. And like, so they needed to be more decisive in response to the allegations. And obviously I said, like, forgetting about Israel, Palestine, I'm sure many people would say, but that's exactly the crux of it. Like, but I mean, it's pretty clear that not liking how Israel has behaved is not the same as being anti-Semitic.
Yeah. But I think
your actions are questionable, like illegal. That not saying that is not anti-Semitic.
No, saying that is not anti-Semitic. There are lots of, and I think in terms of like pro-Palestinian activists, there are more to be found on the left than on the right. But that's not to say, and I think, if you're in that world, maybe sometimes it's hard for you to separate it on a personal level, but, that's why you should be gently reminded that the two are not the same. It's like you can't take any one person's behaviour or one nation's behaviour and have it represent all people. That's just not the world. But yes, I think that's part of the. It's shameful. It's not cool. It's a conversation I wish wasn't necessary.
Yeah, I know, and it's like, and is it my own confirmation bias that I think of like Corbyn in front of the racist graffiti, the anti-Semitic graffiti, because I presume because he didn't look at it properly. And then I also presume, probably, I haven't double-checked, that he said, oh, Christ, I didn't realise that it had that in it when I was talking about it. I now think that it is bad. But the trouble, it's confirmation bias. Once you've got a theory, then, like, you find evidence for something. I'm sure if you said, like, I'm sure you could apply exactly the same logic to a lot of people and find instances where they stood in front of the wrong thing. But maybe that's me just being confirmation biased because I don't want to believe that,
I mean,
this guy's a,
But this is, there's a point at which as well, like, I, as an ordinary citizen, who has work and life, I don't have time to know everything there is to know about everything. It's like, and so I want like if we take our it's the same of the me believing the UN poverty report and not needing to not feeling obliged to question their definition of poverty. Here we have a man who is famous for the fact that he spent his whole career campaigning for the underprivileged. Yes. On all of his voting records in Parliament have always been, left of centre. He stood. As far as I have got in terms of looking at it, Iraq War, all the things that matter to me that I mentioned in the previous episode, like he has voted on what I would consider to be the correct side of history. In terms of like character witnesses and evidence and what have you, I am inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt that he is truly, to his core, an anti-Semite. I find it very hard to believe that is what he is.
It's strange. Well, here's the and then the headline again. I wish I'd gone deeper in, but like you can see that he is an anti-capitalist.
He is an anti-capitalist,
and as he should be, as I am. Like, despite benefiting from it, like capitalism is a poison, like on our society at this point. Hello, comrades. I mean, capitalism has gone to, and so the fact that lots of racist people equate capitalism to Jewishness. Yeah. It just kind of opens up a lot of those ins, doesn't it? But like, that's them. Yeah. It's not Corbyn. He's just, the fact that is not necessarily, it's unfortunate, but not entirely surprising that a piece of anti-capitalist art veers in the correct, if they bring in some sort of stereotypical like anti-Semitic image into that, it's not entirely surprising that they would end up connecting. But it's also like it's in the eyes of the person that thinks that there is a correlation between those two things, which there isn't. There is not a global Jewish conspiracy,
No.
as many of the right seem to believe, even though.
Or at least to you, it's like
very hard to make definitive statements in this area as well without like a lot of research. So I'm sort of like channeling some stuff I've seen said, but like it's a global Jewish conspiracy is a racist theory that thrives on confirmation bias. Connecting anti-capitalism with anti-Semitism is racist in itself.
I think it's a distraction activity.
Yeah. And we're succumbing to it for 20 minutes as well ourselves. It's hard. It's like every minute we give to it is like...
And if there are people... I'm happy to discuss it. I would happily be schooled, educated on this subject. I think this statement that the Brighton and Hove Labour Party members have made, I can include the link, but is sort of captures what I think of this whole process. This is a statement. Yeah. Our statement on anti-Semitism. We, as Labour Party members and affiliates from Brighton, Hove and the surrounding area, representing all wings of the party... This is where the internal momentum versus non-momentum, left and there, Blair versus momentum, all wings of the party hereby register our commitment to tackling anti-Semitism in our party, which has caused so much distress to the local Jewish community in our city. We believe that the actions taken by the party so far, as well as the complaints procedures, have been and are inadequate in addressing the serious problem that exists within the party. As things stand, a culture has developed that gives licence to anti-Semitism and which equates the criticism of such behaviour and the party's disciplinary process as disloyal to the Labour leadership. As we have seen in Brighton and Hove, this can then lead to harassment of those with legitimate concerns. Such a situation clearly has to be tackled. To these ends, we call on Labour's NEC and Brighton and Hove Labour Party organisations to act decisively on anti-Semitism in the party. And then it gives a specific list, specifically work towards independent complaints procedure free from political interference, seek the expulsion of any individual knowingly supporting or sharing a platform with members suspended or expelled for anti-Semitism, keep people safe by changing the rules to prevent those suspended for any type of harassment from attending Labour meetings of any type, including branch meetings and social events, seek the expulsion of those attempting to influence victims of harassment or witnesses through social or print media into withdrawing their complaints, ensure the complainants who are the victims of incidents, including via digital channels, are updated at least fortnightly on the progress. It's very practical. Adopt a zero tolerance policy for the dissemination and sharing of anti-Semitic material on social media, blah, blah. There's not blah, blah. It's just long to read out. Yeah. But it's like, just deal with it.
Yeah.
And let's move on, because I don't think this election is about... This is not an election of whether or not Jeremy Corbyn will make a good Prime Minister. This is an election about whether or not the party that gets into power has adequate policies on welfare, on climate, on the economy, the NHS, on all the things that matter to all of us, which are most important for our survival.
Yeah. And not to, if they're not implementing actual anti-Semitic policies, the Conservatives are literally implementing anti-people in poverty, anti-unprivileged people policies, not just at a legal level, but now a systematic technological level. Like a slightly awkward, messed up stance on what has to be something in your party that is no way ideologically aligned to your values, except in a way that the person doing it has conflated two things that aren't the same thing. That how is that? That's not ideologically consistent with your values, and you would certainly never be implementing policies on that or systems. Fucking irrelevant. Obviously it's important, because if we're voting on values, then it is relevant that someone's a horrible racist. But like, it's hard to not just go back to, but look at Boris Johnson.
Yeah, it's very hard
for
not to go
fuck's
back to
sake.
go look at Boris Johnson. Very
An
hard.
actual outright self-proclaimed racist.
Yeah. So I think, but I think that's why it has been, like Corbyn. And again, we all get taught in school, if somebody's bullying you, teasing you, it's not true. Ignore them. Don't dignify them with an answer. I'm sorry. If you want to be a politician, you do need to dignify them with an answer, and it has to be strong.
So since we recorded the episode, there was this in the debate between Corbyn and Johnson, which I think kind of hopefully covers it, but I'm just going to drop in the audio of this bit of the debate.
Mr. Corbyn, I'm sure, is very well intentioned, but I think that in his handling of this particular issue, his unwillingness to take a stand, to stand up for Jewish people in the Labour Party, his unwillingness to protect them, to put an arm around them, is, in my view, a failure of leadership. You cannot be neutral on questions like this.
Okay, a failure of leadership is when you use racist remarks to describe people in different countries or in our society. I will never do that, and my party will never do that. I hope the Prime Minister understands the hurt that people feel when they hear remarks and articles that he's written in the past. I hope he will regret those, and I hope he will understand the importance of all of us using respectful language of all faiths, all religions and all languages
Thank you,
in
Mr.
what
Gordon.
is a multicultural society which I'm proud to live in.
Hate crimes and racist behaviour stem from inequality at the end of the day.
Yeah.
No one's attacking someone because
They're happy.
their life is great and it doesn't really affect them. Like they're looking for. So the more you bring people up to a similar level, then you would hope that through education that people will realise the truth of the fact that this stuff has no. Well, I mean, it has no place anymore once you start to get in a more socialist infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
It has less and less of a place, and people can actually just like think about stuff that's real instead of going, drawing random connections to try and explain why their life is why they're so downtrodden, beaten down all the time. But yeah, so in terms of socialism versus capitalism,
Yeah.
which is how it's got to be couched everywhere. Yeah, capitalism's got some problems, and I hear people will say, "Oh yeah, but." I don't know about socialism because I think people need to have some sort of ownership. I think college fees are okay because then people value their education more if they paid for it.
They treat it like a commodity, which it is not. Education is not a commodity. Education is a value. Education is a tool. Education is a skill. Education it's not a commodity. You've got students sitting going, well, I paid for this course, I want my degree. It's like, no, sunshine, you work for your degree.
Okay, I'm glad you've got such a quick, outright rejection of that stance, because this is what some, Tory voters will be thinking.
No,
personal responsibility, blah, blah, blah.
Personal responsibility is not taught by making people pay for school, pay for university. No.
So
totally commoditised the whole experience. It's made
Ivanka will send me a link to some research on that, which I will put in the bottom of the podcast, hopefully.
My brother went back to university after the fees thing had come in, but it wasn't $9,000 a year. And then my sister's gone back more recently. She did a degree when it was fees. Her first degree was already fees, and then she's gone back to do this uni thing that's now cost her $9,000 to become a solicitor. And she's like, you are buying a degree. It's a completely different relationship between your tutors and the students, because it's like, we are paying for this. What do you mean I failed?
Yeah, well, this sounds life.
Why haven't you taught me? Why didn't you give me? It's it's not the same sort of respect level. It's not the same sort of relationship at all between.
So it turns people into entitled people, kind of the irony that the meritocrats by kind of introducing personal responsibility and paying for education into this thing, have taken out the personal responsibility of the people to learn things. It's like, no, it's your job to learn the stuff, you don't automatically get it. So yeah.
Also, you go back, this kind of personal responsibility, that's something I need to read about, because I would never use that as an argument. It's like, I've never assumed that everybody's coming from the same place of being able to make personal decisions. Like we were talking earlier about something, and it reminded my dad going when we were doing, but it's very hard not to do the Boris said. My dad, I'd come home, I've got this grade or this happened, and I go, but so and so didn't do. I was like, his answer was always, I'm not talking about anybody else, I'm talking about you and what you have done and what you haven't done and what it's like. And I think, I suppose in that way he taught me personal responsibility. But I was lucky enough to have parents that taught me personal responsibility. Like, how can you? I saw this thing earlier. They were like, I think it was the Lib Dems. We've got a plan to end rough sleeping. Oh, have you now? And how long is that going to take to implement? It's like, it's very hard not to be. I must read it before I mock it, but. But, to end rough sleeping, you've got to go back to the day somebody was born and make sure nothing bad happens to them through their whole life, basically. That means that they don't end up on the streets.
Well, I mean, to paraphrase Andrew Yang's interview that I heard on the Intercept podcast,
right?
Mehdi, it's not a truck driver's personal responsibility that self-driving cars were invented.
No.
It's not someone's personal responsibility that Amazon has automated their retail job out of existence. It's like it's absolutely absurd to claim personal responsibility when some of these things are just. It's not your fault that climate change escalated and the mines had to be closed. How is that personal responsibility?
Yeah.
That's unfortunate circumstances of your birth or your profession or whatever it is you do. How is that the individual's fault? And
it's no more their
mindset.
personal responsibility that's happened to them than it was my personal brilliance that meant that I got into digital when I did.
Well, yeah. And it was sort of like cite back into some of what Darren's been talking about. Like there is you get this survivor bias. You get this like looking at the Secret he talks about and how like all these very successful people were completely single-minded in achieving their dreams and didn't listen to anyone else when they sort of doubted that they would do it, and then they succeeded. It's like they were lucky to succeed, because if the same person failed, the stories we don't hear, they were just stupid. They ignored the advice of people that knew stuff. They ignored all this, but when you are successful, you tend to write your narrative in a way that says like, oh, you did all the right things and now you deserve this. Like, we do have a tendency, when
totally.
I randomly might have found some Bitcoins, I'm like, finally, my ship has come in, I've done the right things, I've learned the right things, and finally I deserve this windfall, and it's like, and it's very hard not to do that for yourself, but certainly doesn't help the people that didn't get lucky.
I saw an alternative Secrets of Successful People the other day, which was like, was born to rich parents, had a, it's like believed there, it went round on Twitter. I haven't got it anywhere. I just did a quick look to see if I could find it, but it's like, these are not the secrets, but yeah, it is that.
I like the idea of a socialist, more left-leaning, radical left. I'm radical left.
Are you?
Proudly,
radical left.
Universal basic income. Let's do it. Let's.
Yeah, I want the luxury automated communism thing.
Yeah,
totally.
Bring it on. and like the fact that people are so kind of, but he's going to bring in communism. It's like you listen to Yuval Harari talking about different belief systems and talking about how communism is the first like modern. How can you be sort of following the teachings of a book that doesn't even know about computers or cars? Like, it just makes no sense. And like communism was like a belief system, a framework of doing things that knew about more current technologies. So we shouldn't be retreating from communism. We should be trying some other ideas in that space. Trying that sort of like forward thinking ideology where we kind of like adapt to the fact that technologies come to a certain place, instead of going, well, once we tried something new and it didn't really work out and now we should never try anything new, like, which seems to be the knee-jerk reaction to people that are scared of communists.
Yeah. It's like I think it's but we have only spoken about Labour and the Conservative Party.
Shall we talk about the Brexit Party? No. Shall we talk about the BNP? No. Shall we talk about the Libs? Lib Dems. I keep forgetting that they went in a coalition with the Tories.
They did.
It's really hard to kind of like...
And I've seen arguments that say, like, so one of the things that our, your proper Labour plans, they always just go back to Lib Dems supported austerity choices, and so therefore dismissed. But then I've heard Lib Dem arguments say if we hadn't been there, it would have been even worse. In terms of like, you don't, because we all, I mean, you only have to have been in a few meetings in your life to understand that shit happens in meetings, that then, it's like there could have been all sorts of rowing going on and then we just hear the result. So, there was obviously a lot of rowing went on before the referendum was called. So, this is where I think it's the current politics is very difficult. In that, what I really want to be able to vote for is policies that say, I want an NHS, I want the climate emergency taken very seriously, I want the green new economy, frankly, I don't really give a shit who delivers it.
Yeah.
You can wear whatever colour T-shirt you want.
They're talking my language in there. I'm just looking at the Lib Dems front page, and they, 1, stop Brexit; 2, tackle the climate emergency; 3, give every child the best start in life; build a fairer economy; transform our mental health services is number 5. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I think like there's a lot behind all of those things. Well, not stop Brexit. Let's just stop Brexit. But like everything else, like there's a lot to that, and they're saying the right things, right? Like there's the right sort of thing to be saying. So. I don't know, like, should I vote for them? Like, should I just vote for them?
I think this is where you're tactical versus... This is where then the conversation has to stretch towards tactical. Because when, I know my sister and her constituency voted Lib Dems one election because there was a chance the Lib Dem was going to get in. But then the problem I feel with some of these other is that we then dilute our votes. So you've got, if you added up everybody who had voted for a Remain, like if you added them up on policies, you'd get different makeup. But because like everybody who's pro-Brexit just out and out votes for the Tories, and then everybody then they're like, oh, Labour's stance on Brexit isn't strong enough, so I'm not going to vote for them. Okay, I might vote for Green because I'm into the climate emergency, but I might vote Lib Dems. And then suddenly you've got what could potentially have been 3 strong votes against a Tory MP being divided across 3 candidates.
I'm going to just interrupt you there and say a vote isn't against someone.
Oh, yeah, that's...
So is that the problem? Like, everyone's like, vote against... fundamentally, I do want my vote to stand against the Tories, but, like, you can't define something by what there's no...
Yeah. I think if anyone from Labour Party HQ listens to this podcast, then I should get, marched out of the party. But I repeatedly vote for Caroline Lucas.
Yeah.
Because on all the values that matter to me, she represents me. I also believe and have believed for a long time that we need more Green MPs in this country. We need more people sitting in Parliament and have done for a long time. Because, that just make sure that it's constantly raised. Because we don't have another 30 years for it to trickle through.
And the difference between Green and like Lib Dem is like they've got stock Brexit as number one, but Green has remain like say yes to Europe and its potential to deliver climate and social justice. There's a why behind it that's a lot less sort of like what team are you on, and a lot more okay, here's the larger problem, here are some things we're going to need, let's not regress in those things. So and I said I voted Green just to I feel I don't want to keep going over the same stuff on the podcast, but like it's a huge, it's not a single issue because it affects everything.
See, but
Climate.
we've got, like in Brighton, what's interesting here is that we've got strong Green candidates standing against strong Labour candidates, and one of the Kemp Town seat is has been held by a Conservative for a long time because it encompasses areas on the very fringes of Brighton, so certain wards where you've got sort of that blue collar Tory voters basically, and so I'd be happy if either of them win. Either the Labour or the Green Party MP. I think the Labour MP who's currently standing, who's doing a good job, doesn't, both in Hove and in Brighton Kemp Town. They're both good MPs. They're not good people who work hard. I mean, what would be great would be a Labour Green coalition. You know,
exactly.
That would be a win. What we can't have is a Tory majority. And, I'd say if you don't know, you should definitely vote with your principles. And if you are informed enough and can be informed enough, then go and find out if a tactical vote is worth doing.
I thought there was more of this candidate standing down, like to not split the vote on the left. It seemed like that was happening, and then what happened there?
I think the Greens have done a lot more of it than anyone else. But Labour's got this again, this is, decisive behaviour from Labour. Labour's got this policy where you have to stand a candidate.
Right.
So they won't stand, it's kind of against the manifesto. And I think that's short-sighted. I think that's party ahead of country. I mean, when that last election was called, I went to the local meeting. I was like, can we please not waste our energy putting a candidate up against Caroline Lucas? And we can concentrate our efforts. We could all go campaigning in Hastings and get rid of Amber Rudd. How fun would that be? And it was like, it was like, we have to put some poor, then they put up a candidate who's not going to win, but sort of gets the practice at standing as a candidate. But then you're going to get a few people who are going to vote for that person, aren't you? Obviously, they're not going to get no votes. So all of this is lovely philosophical conversations, but we don't have time for another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and it's got to come back to, it's not about party when you're choosing who to vote for. It's about who represents you.
Yeah.
And I personally think, on principle, this whole tactical voting thing is a flawed concept.
Yeah.
Just because it just like dilutes the. There's things go beyond your way, which whether or not the person wins. There's a lot more to that picture, and if there aren't lots of people saying but climate emergency, then it does give them permission to think about it less. So, but I don't know. It's this whole it's such a crude environment to be trying to do science in, to me.
Yes.
It's such a kind of chaotic and such a sort of okay, there's just this one moment where someone puts an X and then it's all over kind of thing, to be trying to second guess and think about and put statistics on and polls and all this stuff that just seems like such a losing, you can't predict that future, and you just have to, I don't know, just be honest and just do what's right. But there is a game that can be gamed, and that is what your Boris is going to do. So But I'm just philosophically opposed to trying to game the system.
It's very,
just like,
yeah, it's on principle. Like tactical voting, I equate to changing your Twitter name to Fact Check UK for the evening. It's like it's game for game's sake. It's playing a game, and it shouldn't be playing a game. It's voting for your government. But then the problem is, I think, is that you've got people like you and me who are or strive to be principled, fighting in a system where the opposition have no principles.
Yeah.
And the two are incompatible.
And my ideal result is to let the system evolve over time. Like, I don't know how much it does, but it just seems like it's completely stagnant. Because the system is so old now, it's like it needs to kind of adapt a bit.
Yeah.
It needs to adopt things that it isn't adopting. You know, those of us that do object to the system itself don't really have any way of... It's like, how do you vote for something within the system to change the system? Without, like, that's where people just go, well, I'm not going to vote at all. It's like, well, I don't think this is a very good system. Well, I'm not going to bother with it.
Yeah. No,
maybe we should count all of those. Maybe they should just automatically count everyone that didn't vote and put that into the... they should also be represented.
Yeah.
Automatically by an, I don't know, an AI bot fueled by their Facebook feed.
With a sort of a voting machine at home, so they get to vote on all the policies. Look, I'm not saying this. I had this conversation with my mum. I've had it with somebody else. This is from one of the trustees at the Brighton Natural Health Centre. He put on his Facebook feed, he's like, as soon as the election was scored, like, right, now is the time to stop discussing the nuances of how far left or right or centrist the Labour Party should be. We need a change of government. I have just donated to the Labour Party. It's like, stop. Let's fix these are parallel conversations. We need to have a change of government, and the opposition party is obviously our best chance of that. I would love to see, I would happily support a Labour Green coalition of some description if that's what we end up having to do. And whoever wins the next election, frankly, whatever shape Parliament takes after this election, that Parliament, we all have a duty to hold them to account every single day until they start doing things that we need them to do so we can all survive. Really, that's where we're at. I don't care who wins. Like to my Derbyshire conversation of what's the point? None of them ever deliver on their promises. Well, let's make them. That is really the bottom line.
Doesn't begin and end with that vote. Like, if you don't get the one you want, don't just sulk.
Yeah.
Right. So don't put so much pressure on it either. Like, because you might not get the one you want, but you still got a representative.
Yeah.
So don't overthink it. Just do it.
Yeah.
It is right?
that as well.
Like, don't make it so overblown that you get paralysed by it. Because what you do is you do the thing, okay, fine, that goes whichever way it goes. But then, okay, so now you got this different person that still has to represent you. So you can still hold that person to account, even if you're not even in their party.
Yeah, absolutely. And more so, I mean, one of my friends who did live in Brighton, Kemp Town, when there was a Tory MP, wrote to the man so often. They used to send him emails in the morning going, what do you think of this? Because it's like, totally, like, absolutely not voting for him, actively campaigned against him, but just was like, and another thing. It's like Alejandra's favourite Bart Simpson, when Bart and Lisa Simpson are trying to talk Homer into getting a pool. Can we have a pool, Dad? Can we have a pool, Dad? That's what we need to do. It only begins at the election, people.
Yeah,
that is where it begins.
To tap back in, and the Tories hate it even more because they love privilege and not having to think about poor people's problems. So the more you make, it's win-win, really.
Yeah. How much fun can we have berating a Tory government?
Yeah, just don't. I just want to. What I want to try and here's the value. Don't get decision paralysis. Don't just go, oh, it's too hard, right? That's the worst result for everyone. And the way to do that is to not kind of place quite so much importance on it and just do some research. Let's just kind of hold our noses and jump in and hope that we come out the other side without a Tory government. And if you still don't believe that Tories are up to no good, I did record that. You don't even have to read it on paper. You can listen to the UN Poverty Report. Just listen to it. Researched, non-partisan piece on the fact that the Tories have their fingers in their ears about the most difficult problems that are facing us. And that's a function of not just their privilege, but their kind of complacency. And if nothing else, let's not have complacent people making decisions about the NHS.
Yeah.
Go and have a listen.
And share it. If you have listened, share it. Because I think it's
skeptics.
A very compelling bit of...
media! Thanks for listening. If you like the podcast, go to grandpodcast.com, subscribe there or in this app, and email us hello@grandpodcast.com there as well. Where can people find you, Ivanka?
People can find me at Ivanka on Twitter or at grandpodcast on Instagram.
Find me at michaelforrestmusic.com and YouTube and stuff. My YouTube channel actually does have as its second playlist all of the podcast episodes as YouTube videos because they all go onto YouTube. So if you know,
no excuse.
And Spotify and all sorts. So, what else?
If you are minded to write us a lovely review, maybe give us some stars, all these things that make the algorithm think that we're very popular and that they should show us to more people.
Yeah, please do.
Please do.
And also, buy my... No. There's a Patreon. If you're a fancy pants, you can be an investor. Doesn't that sound fancy?
Yeah.
An investor in our things. Look, we haven't got any ads, so it'd be nice to be able to feel like this wasn't something that we had to just do. We could defend economically as well as philosophically.
Yes.
But yeah, as most other successful podcasters manage to do.
Yes.
And then with that, I think that's subscribe people on their phones and shit.
Yeah, make friends. Tell your friends about our podcast. Discuss us. Argue with us. Tell us we're wrong. Bruce, yeah. I'm looking at you.
I mean, if someone's said this stuff in a way that doesn't make me want to shoot myself in the brains, please feel to share that literature, and hopefully I will become more sophisticated in my understanding of these things. Meanwhile, goodbye. We'll see you next time.
Bye.